The bar at Vera Spaceport was bustling, a cacophony of languages and laughter filling the air as traders, travelers, and various species mingled. Neon lights cast colorful glows on patrons' faces, each light pulse synchronizing with the beats of cosmic jazz played by an Andromedan band in the corner. John Dawson adjusted his jacket and made his way through the crowd, his eyes scanning for the familiar face of his old friend and fellow trader, Mikael. The two humans had arranged to meet here, a common stopover for those seeking rare commodities and the latest news from across the galaxy. As he approached the bar, a mix-up with a drink order inadvertently introduced him to a most unusual figure. The bartender, a harried-looking Rodulan, handed him a shimmering violet cocktail. "Here you go, sir. The stellar fizz you ordered." John glanced at the drink, then back at the bartender. "I think there's been a mistake. I ordered a simple Terran beer," he remarked, pushing the drink back. "That's yours, sir," insisted the bartender, distracted by another customer. Before John could respond, a voice chimed in from his side. "That would be mine, actually." The speaker was distinctly non-human, her skin a soft blue, eyes large and luminous under the bar's neon lights. Her hair flowed like liquid silver down her shoulders. "My apologies," John said, handing her the drink with a smile. "I'm John Dawson, and you are?" "Silara," she replied, accepting the drink. Her voice was melodious, almost hypnotic. "I'm glad to meet someone who doesn't just take a drink because it's handed to them." John chuckled. "In my line of work, you learn when to take what's handed to you and when to pass. Speaking of work, what brings you to Vera? Business, pleasure, or a bit of both?" Silara took a delicate sip of her cocktail before answering. "Much like you, I assume, a bit of both. My people value knowledge, and I am here to gather information that might enrich our understanding of the cosmos." "A noble pursuit," John commented. "Humans mostly chase after profit, but sometimes we stumble upon knowledge." The sound of someone clearing their throat interrupted their exchange. John turned to see Mikael, his robust frame squeezing through the crowd, a grin plastered across his face. "John, you old space dog, I see you've started without me." "Mikael," John greeted him with a hearty slap on the back. "Meet Silara. Silara, this is Mikael, my partner in, well, let's just call them adventures." Mikael extended his hand, his grin unwavering. "Any friend of John is a friend of mine. What were you two discussing? The usual? Star charts, engine mods, or the price of Trilaxian silk?" "Actually, we were discussing the pursuit of knowledge," Silara interjected, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Ah, a philosopher. Well, we have some tales for you," Mikael said, signaling the bartender for another round. "John here is quite the philosopher after a few drinks." As the night progressed, the trio delved into discussions about interstellar economics, ancient civilizations, and uncharted territories. John found Silara's insights fascinating, her perspective so different from anything he'd encountered in his travels. By the time the band started their final set, John and Silara were deep in conversation about a lost artifact rumored to be somewhere in the Outer Rim. Mikael, noticing the chemistry between them, excused himself under the pretext of making a call. As the bar began to empty, John turned to Silara, feeling a connection that was rare in his line of work. "Would you like to continue this conversation tomorrow? Perhaps over dinner?" Silara's smile was enigmatic, yet inviting. "I would like that very much, John Dawson." With plans made for the following evening, they parted ways, not knowing that their casual bar conversation would soon lead them into a galaxy-spanning adventure. The next evening, the air on Vera was warm and filled with the scent of local flora that bloomed in sync with the planet's bioluminescent cycles. John had suggested one of the lesser-known eateries on the outskirts of the spaceport, a quiet spot favored by those who preferred conversation over the typical nightlife clamor. Silara arrived wearing a simple yet elegant dress that shimmered under the twilight sky. John, waiting outside the restaurant, was dressed in a clean, smart jacket that did its best to hide its many light years of travel. He greeted her with a warm smile. "I hope this place meets your expectations," John said as they entered. The interior was decorated with artifacts and images from various explored worlds, giving it an eclectic yet cozy feel. "It looks fascinating," Silara replied, her eyes scanning the walls. "Your world must be very proud of its explorers." "We are, in our own way," John said as they settled into a secluded booth. "Though sometimes I think we venture out more for profit than for pride or curiosity." Their conversation flowed easily as they ordered their meal. John was curious about Nalari culture, but he was careful not to press too hard, sensing that Silara might be reticent about sharing too much. To shift to a lighter topic, John mentioned his love for ancient music, something he collected from every corner of the galaxy. There's something about the old tunes, he explained. They carry the emotions and stories of a time long gone. Do the Nolari have anything similar? Solara's face lit up with enthusiasm. Indeed, we do. Our ancient compositions are not just auditory. They are experiences, blending sound, light, and even emotion through telepathic echoes. Sounds incredible, John said, genuinely intrigued. Music that you can feel and see, not just hear. Yes, it's quite immersive. I have studied many forms of music, but have found a peculiar charm in human classical music. There's a rawness to it, an unfiltered expression of the human spirit. Their meal arrived, bringing with it new topics of discussion, from culinary tastes to the quirks of different planetary ecosystems. As they ate, John found himself increasingly captivated not just by the stories Solara told, but by her perspective on the universe. After dinner, they walked through a nearby park where phosphorescent plants lit the pathways. "You've shown me so much about humanity tonight," Solara said. "It's quite different from the stories and reports that circulate among my people." John chuckled. "I guess it's the same for every species. You don't really know them until you sit down and share a meal." "Or a drink," Solara added with a smile, recalling their first encounter. As they talked, John felt a connection that went beyond their shared interests in music and culture. There was a sense of understanding, of reaching across the vast expanse of space and finding a kindred spirit. Eventually, they paused on a small bridge overlooking a bioluminescent river. The light from the water reflected in Solara's eyes, giving them an ethereal glow. "I never expected to find someone like you," John admitted, his voice low. "Someone who not only challenges my views but opens up the cosmos in a way I hadn't considered." Solara reached out, her hand hesitating in the air between them. "Nor did I, John. It's refreshing and somewhat disconcerting." He met her halfway, their fingers tentatively touching. "Perhaps the cosmos isn't as vast as we thought," he suggested. Solara nodded, her smile both mysterious and inviting. "Perhaps not. But it is certainly more intriguing now than it was before." As they walked back towards the spaceport, neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but both were eager to explore whatever came next, together. As John and Solara strolled back toward the spaceport, the vibrant life of Vera at night buzzed around them. Neon signs blinked in multispectral colors, and the chatter of various alien languages filled the air. Their conversation had deepened, touching on not just cultural exchanges, but their personal aspirations and the constraints placed on them by their respective societies. "Being here with you, discussing our worlds, it makes me realize how insulated I've been," Solara confessed as they navigated through a crowded market area. "The Nolari have strict rules about interactions with other species. It's rare for us to venture out like this." John listened intently, sensing the weight of her words. "It must be tough having to live within such boundaries. Humans cherish freedom, sometimes too much, but it's what lets us meet people like you." They continued to walk, reaching a less crowded side street. The atmosphere suddenly shifted as a group of rough-looking figures blocked their path. They were unmistakably part of an anti-human faction known for their aggressive stance against interstellar integration. Their leader, a tall, imposing figure with scarred skin, stepped forward. "Human, what are you doing fraternizing with an alien?" he sneered, his voice laced with disdain. "Don't you know some species are better left alone?" John tensed, instinctively stepping in front of Solara. "We're just talking. There's no law against sharing a few words." The leader scoffed, and his gang members closed in, creating a tight circle around John and Solara. "Maybe there should be," he replied with a venomous grin. Solara, who had been quiet, now stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried a sharp edge. "I suggest you let us pass. There's no need for conflict." The leader laughed harshly. "Or what? You'll call the spaceport security? We're not afraid of—" Before he could finish his sentence, Solara raised her hand, and the leader suddenly gripped his head, groaning in pain. His companions backed away, confused and frightened. "Leave us," she said, her voice resonating with a commanding tone not heard before. As the gang dispersed, John looked at Solara, both surprised and impressed. "I didn't know you could do that." Solara's face was troubled. "It's something I shouldn't have done," she admitted. "Using my abilities like that, it can have repercussions." They hurried away from the scene, reaching the relative safety of the spaceport. The encounter had left a palpable tension between them. At the docking bay, Solara turned to John, her expression solemn. "John, I need to leave sooner than planned," she said, her voice tinged with regret. "Tonight was wonderful, and I treasure what we've shared, but my actions just now could bring unwanted scrutiny to my family and my people." John felt a pang of disappointment. "I understand. I just wish things could be different." "Perhaps they could be, in another time or place," Solara replied softly. "But for now, this is goodbye." John nodded, struggling to mask his feelings. "Will I see you again?" "I hope so," Solara said, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Keep looking to the stars, John. Maybe one day our paths will cross again." With a final, lingering look, she turned and walked toward her ship, leaving John standing alone amidst the hustle of the spaceport. He watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling a mix of emotions swirl inside him. He knew this was not just a farewell. It was an awakening to the complexities of the universe, pushing him to think beyond his own world. In the weeks following Solara's abrupt departure, John found himself unable to shake the memory of their brief time together. The normal routine of his trade runs felt hollow, each transaction and negotiation reminding him of their conversations about culture, freedom, and the invisible barriers between species. The universe seemed larger and lonelier without her presence. Determined to bridge the distance, John began gathering information about the Nolari. This proved to be no easy task. The Nolari were reclusive, and their interactions with other species were minimal and always shrouded in layers of formality and secrecy. Yet John's years of trading had earned him contacts in obscure places, and his inquiries slowly painted a picture of a society both advanced and intensely private. One evening, on a small bustling station orbiting a gas giant in the outer rim, John met with an old acquaintance, Lyra, a data broker known for her ability to find information others deemed unobtainable. The neon-lit back room of her office buzzed with the hum of ancient computers and the faint scent of ozone. "John Dawson," Lyra greeted him with a sly smile, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "To what do I owe the pleasure? Looking for rare minerals again, or is it something more exotic this time?" "It's definitely not minerals this time, Lyra," John replied, taking a seat across from her cluttered desk. "I need information on the Nolari, anything you can find. Political structures, cultural norms, key figures. I'll take whatever you've got." Lyra raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. "The Nolari, huh? That's a tall order. They keep their secrets well guarded. What's the sudden interest?" John hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I met someone, a Nolari. She made me realize how little we know about each other, and I want to learn more. Maybe find a way to see her again." Lyra's expression softened, a rare occurrence. "Romantic and noble. All right, John, I'll help you out. But it won't come cheap, nor quick. The Nolari are a tricky bunch to learn about." "Thanks, Lyra. I'm prepared to wait and pay whatever it takes," John affirmed, his resolve firm. Over the next few weeks, Lyra sent John sporadic updates. Each piece of information was a fragment, a puzzle piece of a much larger picture. John learned about the Nolari's reverence for their ancient traditions, their sophisticated technology that blended machinery with their innate telekinetic powers, and their governing council, which was as elusive as it was powerful. Armed with this new knowledge, John began to see a pathway, however narrow, to possibly reconnecting with Solara. He understood the risks involved in reaching out to a Nolari, especially one he knew so little about personally, yet who had impacted him so deeply. One evening, as he reviewed the data from Lyra, a message arrived from Mikhail. "Got a lead on a job that's perfect for your new obsession. Meet me at the usual spot on Juniper Station. Might be worth your time." Curious and ever hopeful, John set his course for Juniper Station. The job Mikhail hinted at could be the break he needed to get closer to the Nolari space, or at least to someone who could lead him there. As his ship broke orbit and slipped into the starlit expanse of space, John felt a renewed sense of purpose. Each star no longer seemed just a point of light. They were markers, guiding him on his journey not just through space, but towards understanding a piece of the universe that had unexpectedly claimed a part of his heart. John's ship docked at Juniper Station, a sprawling hub known for its chaotic marketplaces and the diverse crowd it attracted. As he disembarked, he spotted Mikhail leaning against a bulkhead. A knowing grin spread across his weathered face. "There he is, the man chasing stars for love," Mikhail called out, clapping John on the shoulder as they met. "I think I've found something that might interest you." "Let's hear it," John replied, matching his friend's enthusiasm. Mikhail led him through the bustling corridors of the station to a quieter lounge where they could talk more privately. There's a diplomatic envoy heading to the Nolari sector. They're looking for a few extra hands, supposedly for security and maintenance, but you and I know it's all just a cover for the real wheeling and dealing. John's interest piqued. How did you get wind of this? Diplomatic missions to Nolari space are as rare as they come. Mikhail winked. Let's just say I saved the right person from a bad bet. They need someone who knows their way around a ship and isn't known by the Nolari. Someone exactly like you. Realizing the gravity of the opportunity, John nodded solemnly. What's the catch? No catch, just risks, Mikhail explained. The Nolari are suspicious of outsiders. You'll need to keep a low profile. If they find out who you really are or why you're there, it won't just be your neck on the line. It could spark a diplomatic incident. I understand the risks, John said, his mind racing with the possibilities of seeing Solara again. I'll take it. Over the next few days, John prepared for the journey, poring over the cultural do's and don'ts Lyra had provided about the Nolari. He also equipped himself with tools that could help in maintaining his cover as part of the ship's crew. The voyage to Nolari space was tense and quiet, with each member of the envoy aware of the delicate nature of their mission. As they approached the Nolari homeworld, a planet enveloped in swirling clouds and glowing auroras, John couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and anxiety. Upon landing, the envoy was greeted by a Nolari committee. John stayed in the background, observing their customs and interactions. He noted the formalities, the precise language, and the controlled expressions of the Nolari, everything Solara had subtly hinted at during their meetings. Once the initial pleasantries were exchanged, John found himself with some freedom to explore the area around the landing site. The architecture was a blend of high technology and natural elements, each building seamlessly integrated into the lush, vibrant landscape. It was a world that was at once breathtaking and intimidating. As he wandered, John kept his eyes open for any sign of Solara. He knew it was a long shot, but the thought that she might be nearby spurred him on. That's when he heard a familiar voice, not in person, but over a public address system announcing some local event. It was her, Solara. Following the sound, John discreetly made his way towards a large public assembly where Solara was indeed present, speaking to a crowd about the importance of interstellar cooperation and understanding. Her words were measured, yet passionate, and it struck John how much of an influence she might hold among her people. He stayed hidden, a mix of emotions swelling within him. There she was, the same yet so different in her element, surrounded by her people. As the crowd dispersed, John debated whether to approach her, weighing his desire against the potential risks. In the end, the decision was made for him. A sudden alert sounded throughout the city. There had been a breach in protocol by one of the human delegates, not John, but it was enough to send the security forces into high alert. John knew he had to leave immediately to avoid further complications. He retreated back to the envoy's ship, his heart heavy with the realization that his journey had been both a revelation and a missed opportunity. As the ship lifted off, leaving the Nolari world behind, John looked back at the receding planet, knowing that his quest to reconnect with Solara was far from over. The return journey from the Nolari homeworld was somber. John was enveloped in a mix of frustration and revelation. He had been so close to Solara, yet circumstances forced him to retreat without a word. However, the sight of her speaking so fervently about interstellar cooperation ignited a spark of hope. It was clear that despite the barriers between their worlds, Solara held similar dreams of bridging the divide. Once back at Juniper Station, John sought out Mikhail, who was unsurprised by the turn of events. "These diplomatic missions are powder kegs," Mikhail remarked as they met in the usual dimly lit lounge, just waiting for the smallest spark. "But tell me, did you see her?" "I did," John admitted, his voice low. "She was speaking to a crowd about cooperation between species. It's what we talked about, Mikhail. She's trying to change things from within." Mikhail nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like you both are on similar paths, just with different maps." "That's a good way to put it." John smiled weakly. "I need to find a way to communicate with her, Mikhail. There must be some channel, some method that hasn't been completely closed off." Mikhail leaned back, rubbing his chin. "Well, you might not have to look too far. Remember Lyra? She might have something up her sleeve. That woman's network is better than any spy satellite." Grateful for the suggestion, John contacted Lyra once more, explaining his need to establish a discreet line of communication with Solara. Lyra, ever the resourceful broker, promised to look into secure channels that wouldn't attract attention. Days turned into weeks as John waited with bated breath. During this time, he continued his trading, but his roots always brought him back to Juniper Station, keeping close to any potential news. Finally, Lyra contacted him with promising news. "I found a way," she said when they met again in her cluttered backroom office. "It's through an encrypted courier service used by academics and researchers to share sensitive data. It's unofficial, but highly respected for its confidentiality." "That sounds perfect," John replied, his hope renewed. "How do I use it?" Lyra outlined the process, which involved sending digital messages encoded in such a way that they resembled academic research. "To anyone scanning, it'll just look like you're discussing old Nolari architecture or some such," Lyra explained with a wink. Armed with this new tool, John crafted his first message to Solara, embedding his words within a fake research paper on the cultural significance of Nolari public spaces. He expressed his desire to continue their conversations and his hope that they could find common ground for the benefit of both their people. Weeks passed without a reply, leaving John to wonder if his message had ever reached her. Then, late one evening as he reviewed cargo manifests in his ship's cabin, a notification chimed. It was a response, encrypted and carefully hidden within an analysis of interstellar botanical exchanges. Solara had received his message and shared his hopes. She proposed a secret meeting on a neutral planet where both their ships could dock ostensibly for repairs. Filled with a mix of elation and anxiety, John prepared for the rendezvous. This meeting would not just be a personal reunion, but might pave the way for future dialogue between their species. As his ship set course for the agreed location, John reflected on the winding path that had led him here. The stakes were high, not just for him and Solara, but potentially for the broader cosmos. If they could find a way to bridge their worlds, perhaps others would follow. With each star that passed, his resolve deepened, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The neutral planet chosen for the secret rendezvous was a small, barren world in the outer rim, far from the prying eyes of any major power. As John's ship approached the designated coordinates, he could see Solara's vessel already waiting, a sleek silhouette against the stark backdrop of the planet. Their ships docked, and John hastened through the airlock with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Solara was waiting for him in the docking bay, her expression one of both relief and concern. "John," she greeted him, her voice a soft whisper in the vast emptiness of the bay. "I'm glad you made it safely." "The feeling's mutual, Solara," John replied, taking a cautious step forward. Their reunion, while heartfelt, was overshadowed by the gravity of their situation. They retreated to a private chamber in Solara's ship to discuss their plans. The room was dimly lit, the walls adorned with Nolari art that seemed to pulse gently, reflecting the serious mood. "Solara, we need to talk about the potential consequences of our meetings," John began, his voice tense with unspoken fears. "If we're discovered, it won't just be us at risk. It could escalate tensions between our people." Solara nodded solemnly. "I know, John. That's why I've been cautious. But we can't ignore the possibility of creating a new path for our species. Our people need to see that cooperation is possible." As they spoke, a sudden alert sounded through Solara's ship. "We've got incoming ships," her second-in-command reported over the comms. "Looks like a patrol unit stumbled onto us." John's heart sank. "We need to handle this carefully. Can we talk our way out of this?" Solara was already moving towards the control room. "I'll try, but be prepared for anything." In the control room, visuals from the external cameras showed several small, heavily armed ships approaching. Solara opened a communication channel, her face composed as she spoke with the patrol leader. Despite her diplomatic tone, the conversation quickly soured. The patrol was not convinced by her explanations of a simple mechanical rendezvous. The tension escalated into a confrontation when one of the patrol ships fired a warning shot. Solara's crew was on high alert, and John could only watch as the situation spiraled. "We have to disengage," Solara decided, her voice firm. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. John, you should get back to your ship." Reluctantly, John agreed. As he returned to his vessel, he heard the sounds of distant artillery. The patrol had engaged Solara's ship in combat. John's hands were tied as his ship was not equipped for battle. His only option was to retreat and seek help. As he maneuvered his ship away from the conflict, the reality of the situation hit him. This encounter would likely spark further hostilities between human outposts and the Nolari sectors. His personal quest to bridge two worlds had thrust him into the midst of a potential war. With a heavy heart, John set course for the nearest human colony, determined to warn them and, hopefully, to find a way to de-escalate the situation. His thoughts were with Solara, hoping she could safely disengage and that their dream of unity wouldn't end in interstellar conflict. As his ship sped away, the stars blurred into streaks of light, a stark reminder of how quickly peace can turn to war in the vastness of space. John's arrival at the human colony was met with immediate concern. The local authorities, upon hearing his report, scrambled to assess the threat and prepare for potential repercussions from the skirmish with the Nolari patrol. John found himself thrust into a series of urgent meetings with colony leaders and military strategists. While the colony mobilized, John's thoughts were consumed by worries for Solara and the impact of their encounter. The possibility of war loomed large, a stark contrast to the unity they had envisioned. Amidst this chaos, John received a heavily encrypted message from Solara, confirming her safe escape from the confrontation, but warning of increased tensions on her side as well. The news spurred John into action. He proposed an official diplomatic mission to the Nolari to explain the situation and clarify that the meeting was a private initiative, not an act of espionage or aggression by human forces. Reluctantly, the colony leaders agreed, wary of escalating conflict but recognizing the need for dialogue. With a small contingent of diplomats and security personnel, John journeyed back towards Nolari space, his mind racing with potential scenarios. The trip was tense, every communication with Nolari outposts fraught with suspicion and the heavy burden of diplomatic formality. Upon reaching the Nolari homeworld, John and his delegation were met with a cold reception. Escorted under strict supervision to a high-security meeting facility, they awaited a chance to present their case to the Nolari High Council. Solara was there when they entered the council chamber, her presence a slight relief to John amidst the sea of stern faces. The council session was grueling, with John explaining the nature of his and Solara's meetings, emphasizing their personal initiative and the hope of fostering understanding between their people. After hours of deliberation, the Nolari Council decided to treat the incident as an isolated event, not reflective of broader human intentions. They agreed to a series of joint talks to ensure that such misunderstandings would not escalate into open conflict in the future. Relieved, John worked alongside Solara to establish protocols for these new diplomatic channels. Their efforts, born from a shared vision of peace, gradually began to bear fruit. Over the following months, tensions eased as both sides engaged in cultural exchanges and joint scientific endeavors, laying the groundwork for a tentative but hopeful coexistence. As John watched this new era unfold, he realized that their journey had sparked a broader movement across the cosmos. The challenges were immense, but the potential for lasting peace and cooperation was a testament to the power of understanding and the resilience of those willing to bridge divides. In a quiet moment, standing beside Solara as they looked out over her homeworld's vibrant landscape, John felt a profound connection, not just to her but to the entire universe. They had traversed great distances and faced formidable obstacles, but in the end, they stood together, a symbol of hope for their people. "Our paths crossed for a reason," Solara said, her hand finding his. "Maybe we were just two among billions, but together, we've started something that might just change the stars." John smiled, squeezing her hand. "Across the cosmos," he replied, and back again. Together, they watched the sunset on her planet, the sky a blaze of colors that no human had ever seen before, a beautiful reminder of the diversity and wonder of the universe they shared. As the stars began to appear, they knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in the interstellar saga.